Lawyers or Reddit. What is the most shocking case you have worked on? I'm not a lawyer, but I worked in a foreclosure mediation/diversion court as a counselor. Usually it was people with bad luck, unemployment or addiction that lead them there. Heavy stuff but became run of the mill. One guy I will never fucking forget. He comes in and at first it looks like a standard unemployment deal. There are programs with mortgage companies to deal with. He was a dock worker, made pretty good money, but hadn't worked for 6 months and was about to lose the house. I ask for his story and he tells me it all started 20 years ago. His older son was in the army in Korea at a base on deployment and his younger son was at a high school party in their town. Apparently he gets into it with another kid over a girl, and the kid grabs a barbecue fork and stabs the son in the neck. His youngest bleeds out before an ambulance arrives. The older son is devastated because he wasn't there to protect his brother. The father and mother end up divorcing over the grief, but older son returns, makes a life, has a couple young kids and it all seems good. But 6 months prior he just walks into his garage and shoots himself in the head. Leaves a note that he can't live with not having been there for his baby brother even after all these years. So my client goes into a depressive state, stops working, stops paying bills, just can't deal with the grief and destruction of his family that one event emanated. What pulled him out of almost killing himself was that the guy who killed the younger son came up for parole. He went and spoke against him getting out and then realized he had to live for his grandkids. I still think about that dude regularly. Grief is so fucking powerful it pulsates out and destroys if you don't have the right support. I used to work as a legal secretary for a personal injury lawyer. He told me about a case where his client had radiation burns from an X-ray machine. In the avalanche of documents he received from the defendant during discovery, he found an internal memo. The memo described a serious problem with the machines and continued, "This is an issue we can't ignore. Unfortunately, it's not in the budget." When the case went to trial, he told the jury, "Show them they need to put this in the budget next time." The jury complied, handing down one of the largest verdicts California had ever seen. I know a former radiology technician. She said her coworkers didn't give a shit about irradiating patients and wouldn't bother to decrease the beam size when taking pictures. Ada, happy to say, actual X-ray technicians reporting that this is uncommon and most are very careful. Yay. TL, DR, lady wanted to show me her vagina. It just happened to not be attached to her body. I already told one shocking story in this thread, but I got another that is a different kind of shocking. I was pretty new to the practice and was meeting with a lot of clients. The firm I worked for had a lot of walk-ins and I was processing the potential clients. I called in the next person and a mid-30s woman walked in carrying a red and white cooler. She pops in down on my desk and spends about 5 minutes trying to sit down in the chair. My first thought was must be some kind of personal injury. First words out of her mouth after she sits, "I need to sue my doctor because my vagina just fell out." My eyes immediately lock onto the cooler. Is that? Yes, I brought in with my just in case you needed to see it. Do you want to see it? She begins to open the cooler. Not gonna lie, I was curious but I stopped her and convinced her that a hospital was her best option at the moment. Turns out she had vaginal reconstruction and the mesh came out in one big blob. Now, this is not my area of expertise. I am a corporate attorney, so I sent her to someone with more expensive. Edit, meant experience not expensive but both are true so I'll let it stand. Probably a veterans benefits case where the government got out of paying benefits by arguing that the vet's hearing loss was caused by gunfire from occasional recreational hunting rather than several years of working daily in close proximity to jet engines during his service. Enraging and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. This shit is infuriating, especially when 18-year kids are sold on the idea of healthcare for life by slimy recruiters. The VA doesn't give a shit about you. Edit, for people wanting more info on stuff like this that is going on today, look up Jon Stewart's stance on the burn pits that the United States created during our war on terror. The military men manning these burn pits got cancer at a much faster rate than first responders of 9/11 have. But the VA still refuses to do anything. Some of them aren't even out of their 20s yet. But yet they're dying from cancer after being around these toxic fumes. I was dating a nice woman back in 2016. In our first conversation, I asked her what she did for a living. She was a paralegal for a malpractice firm at the time. I asked her if there were any interesting cases happening. She said yes, one we are going to lose. I was interested. I asked what happened. She told me, well, we are defending a doctor who made a mistake. One of his patients was suffering from an eye condition that required a unique recovery. After surgery, the patient had to lie face down for the entirety of their day to prevent further eye damage. It had something to do with eye pressure and a gas buildup near the back of the eye. As it turns out, the patient wanted to fly on a plane and would intend to keep their eyes down through the whole flight. The doctor we're defending didn't tell the patient that they couldn't fly during the recovery. The next part definitely sucked. When the patient took off on the plane, everything was okay. During descent, which people with ear problems can attest, the rapid change in pressure fucked up this patient's condition. They went completely blind in both eyes due to the descent of the plane. Predictably, The doctor did lose the case. It was definitely an interesting first conversation to have with someone. I would be interesting to know if the patient told the doctor about the flight. Like if I don't mention scuba diving, does the doctor just have to assume I might scuba dive and tell me not to with stuff? What if he said, stay laying down in for 3 days, and the patient said, okay, and then he is sued into oblivion? I was clerking at the time. Little kid fight club. Bunch of moms put their kids in a circle and made them fight each other gladiator style. Real dark stuff. Video included 2 10-year-old girls beating the crap out of each other. Bets were taken but not on all fights. Some were just for entertainment. No fathers involved. I told this story on r/lawyers a little while ago, but I'll tell it again here. I'm an immigration lawyer. I do mostly VAWA and asylum, but I handle other stuff on occasion. I had a prospective client come in a few weeks ago. He's interested in pursuing a relatively straightforward application. He tells me that he might have a criminal history that could affect his immigration. It's only one arrest though, he says. It happened in 19XX, and it's not serious. Okay, I say. It happens. Nobody's perfect, and a single arrest is generally not a deal breaker. So, as I'm talking with him, I decide to Google his pretty unique name. A news article comes up, from his country, in his language. It's dated the same year, he said. 19XX. I ask him, what kind of crime did you say it was? Oh, he says, I think it was drug related. I figure, alright, marijuana arrest or something, nothing we can't overcome. I click through to the article. The photo on the article sure looks like a lot like the prospective client. Turns out, prospective client's arrest was not for marijuana at all. It was for cocaine, and not a little cocaine. This guy was caught attempting to smuggle 20 pallets of cocaine. I must have looked a little bug-eyed, because the guy gave me a sort of sheepish look and a shrug. I tell the prospective client, maybe we should start by filing a few FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, to see what comes up, and we'll go from there. He agrees. And that's that. I'll double check my suspicions against the government record, and let the client know what can, or cannot, be done. Suffice it to say, getting caught smuggling multiple pallets of cocaine is not a small-time arrest. But, you never know what is or isn't true, and you should always do your due diligence. I normally defend construction defect and personal injury matters. Nothing too crazy. Early in my career we got a case involving a husband and wife who ran a foster home, and one kid was alleging the husband had molested them. I was assigned to defend only the wife under their homeowner's insurance policy. The allegations against the husband were bad, but the wife had no idea what was going on. Here was this poor woman, who was also a former foster child, trying to give back and help other foster children in the system. And now she finds out her husband is a child molester. It was heartbreaking, and we just wanted to get her out of the case. Then we get more documents and learn this isn't the first child to make allegations. The dad had been doing this shit for years and she knew it. Maybe she was involved. Maybe she just ignored it. Either way, the whole thing turned fucking gross. I instantly wanted nothing to do with it. A few weeks later, my boss, the coolest guy ever, comes in and says he gave the case back to the insurance carrier. Thank God. That was the only case I've ever felt morally opposed to handling. Edit, I should also clarify that once a lawyer takes on a case, it's not that easy to just say actually I changed my mind. I don't know what my boss did to get rid of that case, but I'm glad he was equally grossed out. Back in the day I investigated, and later in my career prosecuted lots of arson, so I worked a lot of fire cases. One time the crews roll up on a garage fire. They are met by the home's resident holding a blood-soaked towel to his crotch. The medics get him stable and transported. He later tells us the voice told him to eat a whole box of saltine crackers without drinking any water, and he was like okay, and did that. Then the voice told him to eat the newspaper and he was like check. Then the voice said to cut off his testicles with a can opener and he was like yep. Then the voice said set the van on fire in the garage and he was like you got it. He did all those things in that order. And there were the scene photos of the testicles right there on the garage floor. We got him into mental health court and he did pretty well. I am an attorney, but the case that stuck with me most was one I sat in on during undergrad. I was a criminal justice major, and frequently had to go watch trials for class assignments. I was in the military at the time, so I had to cram these hours in randomly, if we had a light day, or I could take a long lunch. I would go to the closest courthouse and check what was available. One day I went down to the federal courthouse in Baltimore and checked the list. One criminal case, nothing else going. I head upstairs and quietly walk in. Despite that, clearly everyone checks me out, which is odd. Usually no one pays attention to the gallery. At the first break, a guy comes over and asks me who I am and why I'm there. Hess Office of Special Investigations with the air for ease, so I show him my ID and explain I have to watch criminal trials. He gives me a weird look but doesn't push. As I'm sitting there, I slowly realize I should not be here. Air Force couple has a son, gets divorced. She takes son with her to her duty station in Japan, and remarries a civilian employee there. Dad is deployed, and then moves station, and keeps bugging her about when he can see the son. At some point she just stops responding. A few months later, After dad has filed a report with her command requesting they make her communicate with them, dad gets a call from an OC agent who he knows, asking him for his son's full name and DOB. Dad gives it to him. An agent says, "Look, I didn't tell you this, but you need to call OC on her base." Mom had gone to the field and 8-year-old son had been bugging the stepdad while he was gaming. Stepdad got pissed off and beat the kid with the first thing to hand, a piece of banister from the stair he was working in. Mom came back from the field 2 days later and found the son unconscious, still on the floor, because stepdad's last home of record was in Maryland. He was tried in federal court in Baltimore. I sat through the ER doc who treated the son, who talked about seeing the internal crush injuries, and the coroner who talked about how hard you would have to hit an 8-year-old on the front to cause bruising on his back. I also sat through the dad talking about finding out his son was gone. After that day, I always went to misdemeanor court for my hours. Did an alleged arson case for an insurance company once. The insured had to provide a list of all items he had lost, including over 1,000 book titles. Every book was the biography of a serial killer. We figured it was probably every book ever written about a serial killer. Insured gave off serious, dark and mysterious vibes. Who knows the truth? Neighbor is a retired prosecuting attorney. Told me about a sex trafficking case involving girls in their early mid-teens. Their pimp bought them a puppy that they got attached to and all took care of together. Whenever they fell out of line, the pimp would send videos of himself abusing the puppy and threaten to kill it if they didn't obey. Fucking scum. Slayer statute. Interpleader case in federal court. Client murdered her husband to collect insurance proceeds. Found out that she promised to pay 2 dudes to bind his hands and feet with duct tape, execute him, and burn him in an alley, for $20,000 each, to be paid out of the insurance funds. She lost. Client paid a multi-million-dollar settlement with a handwritten personal check. He was pissed and refused to do a wire transfer like a normal person. I think the other side had to scramble to find a bank to deposit the check. Banking regulations limit how much money a bank can hold on deposit. You just can't take a check that large to any local bank. The check eventually cleared, so I guess they figured it out. Good times. That case will be on my resume for sure. A labor case in which, in the middle of the hearing, the judge, 60 years old male, start to flirt with my client, 23 years old female, in a direct, straightforward way. It was so shocking that was one of the only cases I got speechless in a trial. Those hearings are closed here in Brazil, so no jury, no recording, nothing. Not a lawyer, but a translator. I once translated this text about a case. Basically, this mother's kid set her house on fire whilst she left the USA to China to cremate her husband who died of terminal cancer. The kid literally burned everything, all her life savings. Then the daughter went on to tell lies to all her family members in China, saying how the mother is just accusing her. Was rough translating, especially because the mother left to the USA in the 1990s, worked her ass off, only to let her husband suffer years of cancer and her daughter to burn her house down. No. My brother and multiple other kids were part of a case where a lady showed up to a children's football practice and sprinted after several of them, screaming that she was going to kick their asses, and started screaming at my brother, "You want a piece of me?" while chasing after him. These kids were as young as 8 years old. The extra crazy part was in court when her lawyer asked a witness at the stand, one of the coaches that we'll call Tim Jones's, "Sir, what is your relationship with Tim Jones?" Tim responded, slightly confused, "I //him /Tim Jones. Not an attorney, but worked several years as the case manager for a circuit court chief judge whom was over several counties. It's a toss-up really from my days doing in-home or the ones I heard while directly employed by the judicial system. One. There was the mom and dad who charged anywhere from $25 to $200 a pop to molest their children while it was recorded. Then they sold the recordings online for more money too. The beautiful mother who was actually a part of a family known for some generational incest, but her mother got pregnant with her by a stranger. She had children, 2 girls and a boy. She made her 6-year-old boy penetrate her and his sisters on film, and she would make them all have orgies together. All filmed. She used a tripod camera to record. Her husband, the kid's stepdad, came home one day and found them all. He beat the kids for cheating with his wife, and while drunk one night showed someone the film. He was charged with the sexual assaults despite the kids saying he didn't film them or molest them personally, but had their older cousin. Anyway, mom claimed that husband, stepdad was abusive and made her perform these sex acts. Kids were too young to testify or to put through testimony. No gal was appointed in the criminal action. Anyway, he got like 10 to 12 years and mom served 6 months for indecent exposure, a singular count. We had the family court case. The kids fucking hated her. When the mom filed a motion for return, the children were so scared they'd be made to return to her they all tried to kill themselves in various fashions. Thankfully none of the 3 were successful. This one. https://caselaw. finlaw.com/wa Court of Appeals /1690894. HTML. When the opinion starts with according to one examining psychiatrist, Michael Lee West is the most dangerous man he ever evaluated. You know it's going to be a wild ride. Not a lawyer, but I work for the DA in my area. Part of my job is digitizing old evidence. Animal abuse is never fun. Baby autopsies for shaken baby cases are pretty gruesome. The worst was definitely the 15-year-old rape victim who was left to rot in a field for 3 to 4 months before they found her. I had to make sure all those crime scene and autopsy photos are scanned in properly too. Can't have them too blurry or miss one. Close second is the father that beat his teen daughter half to death with an extension cord, who had the family rally around him and pony up the bail immediately after arraignment. They didn't give a shit about the girl. Legal videographer here. Grandparent custody case where the dad got photographed molesting the 8-year-old daughter under the Christmas tree. Kid goes for a medical exam and the doc reports extensive injuries usually associated with sex abuse. Then checks a box to indicate the injuries were not related to abuse. Police say nothing they can do about it because of the checked box. The mom commits suicide because the dad didn't want to sleep with both at the same time according to him. And the person holding the gun when she shot herself gets a misdemeanor IRC. Police lose 2 polygraph tests and a couple rape kits. Grandparents lose custody case. Oh, his dad was a magistrate in the same county. And the dad gets full custody. Unfortunately, that day when I got home, eye bleach had a series of infant and toddler photos instead of kittens and puppies. Oh Christ. A family law matter. I was a newly minted attorney who couldn't find work in the early 2010s and took anything that came to me. Custody battle. I represented mom. Dad lived with his grandfather, who had been convicted twice of violently raping other grandchildren. Easy case, right? No. Because mom absolutely forbade me from bringing grandfather's convictions before the judge. Said he made some mistakes, and while she wanted full custody, of course, she felt bad that grandfather's past mistakes might be used against him in the future. Forever. I brought it up to the judge anyway. She fired me on the spot. During oral arguments, she ended up suing me. It was a fucking mess. Would do it again. I'm an interpreter, not an attorney, but I had a school case to interpret regarding bullying. The school decided to have a court case decision made in-house. It was 12 kids and their parents on a stage in the cafeteria. The school officials were there and a school advocate who acted as judge. Apparently the seniors would trap the freshmen in a designated bathroom after lunch and jump them. 4 seniors and 8 freshmen who were beat up individually. There were supposed to be 9, but 1 was in the hospital. They showed surveillance of how the seniors picked the freshmen to beat up, and there were 2 teachers aware of this. In one of the videos, one of the teachers helped the seniors by pointing out who the freshmen were. This was a hazing technique that was going on in the school for years, but this case was to make an example of those involved. The teachers involved were only mentioned when the bullies admitted receiving assistance in pointing out who to beat up. The teachers never got in trouble. Only 1 bully was expelled and all the freshmen were suspended. It was unjust and sad. This case went on for 3 days and each case lasted 3 to 5 hours after school. I'm not a lawyer, but I work closely with a lot of lawyers and see the same stuff they do. There was a case where a lady had been a victim of human trafficking and was kidnapped in her home country and sold into a prostitution ring in the U.S. She escaped, applied for asylum, told the FBI and whatnot everything she knew about her kidnappers and the others who bought her, putting her life in major danger, and was told that's all it would take to get her asylum and permanent residency taken care of. Fucker still tried to deport her. Don't worry, she won her case, but only because one of the top attorneys in New York, if you know of a lot of attorneys in NYC, you've probably heard about this one, took the case on pro bono. It was wild to me how hard ICE fought to get her sent back and how intense that case got. I was an intern at the time for the public defender's office and witnessed a pretty good one. 2 guys walk into a liquor store. One of them is packing a revolver. They shove around the old store clerk and get him to open up the registers. After looting all the cash, the robbers walk out of the store to their car. The store clerk, who I think was also the owner, then goes to get his gun and makes chase. He manages to pop off a few shots at the robbers as they wheel away with great haste. Now, there were 2 cops in the same shopping center. They were responding to a stabbing at a nearby AA meeting, and they hear the gunshots and see a car speeding away. As they turn the corner, they see the old man with firearm in hand pointing down the road after the car. They yell an order to freeze, put down your weapon, or something to that effect. The old man makes the mistake of turning before putting down the gun, so the cops then open fire. The clerk is shot 3 times by the cops, but fortunately not fatally. 2 to the torso and 1 that takes off his trigger finger. Good shot, I guess? The robbers later crash a few blocks down the road, as the clerk was also a pretty good shot and managed to hit the getaway driver in the leg, causing him to pass out at the wheel due to blood loss. I was defending a guy who was charged with theft of property and breaking and entering. The DA offered a plea deal of 18 months in prison. He said he couldn't be away from his family for 18 months. Guy had some priors and trial could cost him to be gone away a lot longer, but he insisted on taking it to trial. We strike a jury and he comes to the first day of trial. Surprisingly, the DA was still offering the 18 months right before trial started. The evidence against him was overwhelming. I told him so, but he wanted to take it to trial. We get through the first day and on the second day he doesn't show up. The judge said to finish the trial without him, to which I argued against, but we still had it. The jury found him guilty and swore out a warrant for him. Later on that day I found out he hung himself overnight. He just couldn't stand to be away from his family for 18 months. That messed me up for a little while. My mom's ex-boyfriend had to defend a triple murder with kidnapping. Two of the victims were a mother and her 3-year-old son. Defendant had some kind of psychosis. I'm not sure what. He attempted to carjack a fourth victim who was able to overpower him, leading to his arrest. Said ex-boyfriend switched to prosecution after that. Okay, obligatory, not my story. And technically not a case he worked on, but a shocking story about the legal system. So get ready for a tangentially related story. And hashtag X200B. So, my brother is a lawyer. One day he's T-boned at an intersection. Turns out the guy who hit him was FBI. It's apparently procedure when an FBI agent gets in a car accident, their punishment is that they have to work the next FBI car accidents paperwork. And hashtag X200B. So there's my brother talking to this FBI agent working the accident and they hit it off. It comes out that my father and uncle are both former law enforcement, so they start talking about cases they've worked on. The FBI agent tells my brother that he was on scene at the 97 North Hollywood bank shootout, which took place right down the street from where my brother lived at the time. So my brother straight up asks him, "Those guys, robbers, that were shot, did the ambulances really not get there in time?" The FBI guy looks to him and basically tells him, "Those ambulances and paramedics weren't let anywhere near those guys until they died."